Hey, Composing Gloves here, and this is the first video in the 3 oscillator from the ground up tutorial series. So what is this series going to be about? Well, in this series, you are going to learn the fundamentals of the 3 times OSC, or 3 oscillators, what I'm going to call it, because that all those letters and stuff doesn't really roll off my tongue very quickly. So in the 3 oscillator, you're going to learn how this is, first off, one of the things that when people are brand new, they tend to go to this because it's not that scary. Look at that. There's 3 things, a couple knobs, buttons. You have these extra tabs here. Like, oh, yeah, it's kind of an interesting deal. And people will recommend learning on this first sometimes. I prefer learning on something with a little more, oomph to it, like Harmer or Citrus, but those things are like way too much oomph for very first beginning sound designers. So this is a great place to start. You are going to get out of this series a whole bunch of techniques. You're going to learn what all the buttons and knobs do and stuff like that. But the goal is to show you the application of these buttons and knobs. Not necessarily a sound design with. That's the second series that will follow this one day. Maybe not immediately because I'm working on a number of other things. And this was requested. So I decided, hey, you know what? I'll go ahead and give this thing a whirl because it's a pretty fun thing. I really like talking about this beginning stuff. Some of the most interesting concepts. So you're going to learn principles behind the buttons, what they're typically used for, so that when you say, oh, I want to make this kind of a sound, you can have an idea of what you're touching. When you touch the knob, you're going to be like, oh, theoretically it's doing this, that, this, and the other, and then you can make something cool. At the end, you should make a preset patch or something. Use the knowledge and then drop it in the comments. Be like, hey, here's a bunch of presets I made. FL Studio has a forum, but it'd be cool if you linked a thing that you learned from my video series to that, because it's really cool to see that people have learned things from my videos and actually use them, and to make them available for other people to use is even cooler. If you take the knowledge and make something useful from it. So that's what you're going to be learning essentially, is that. So that's really the goal of this series, is you be able to touch this with confidence, be directionally creative, and just go at it and have fun. I will be treating this more as an introductory series to sound design, but for you advanced sound designers, it's always a good refresher course, and you may pick up some nifty tricks and stuff. Maybe just workflow in FL. I don't know. Probably not workflow in FL. We're going to be sticking to mostly this. A couple things. I'm going to be doing a little bit of sound design with 80s and layering, and approaching a couple other ideas probably, because that was one of the things that the person who requested this wanted out of it, and it would probably fit better in the sound design with, but I also feel like it's quite applicable as an idea here. You will be surprised to see how much you can get out of it though. Okay, before I go any further, you need to know some things. So first, you need to know what aliasing is. If you don't know what aliasing is and what anti-aliasing is, you need to go look it up because it's fundamental to this sound design. One of the main reasons, this was very evident when I did my Citrus from the ground up, because Citrus had all these things all over the place that aliased because of FM, just the nature of FM synthesis. So this is subtractive synthesis, which means that we are taking things and subtracting. You take a sound, you generate some sound, and then you take away parts of that sound to generate a new sound. This though, and I may even go into post here. I may have a whole thing about using it with post, but it'll mostly come up in ideas after. You could also slap this on as a little extra boost. I'm not going to be focusing on it. That's more of a mixing thing. And yeah, I really should consider some way to include that in sound design, because it really is quite an impressive ordeal sound design wise. Maybe like a sound design post video series. I don't know, something that's not mixing, because they're definitely different ideas, but they're similar ideas applied very differently. Okay, so you need to know what aliasing is. If you haven't watched my digital audio basic series and you don't know very much about digital audio, I highly recommend watching the whole thing. It will change your the way you look at synthesis digitally. When things go weird or wrong, you're going to be able to go, hey, this is the button that's doing it, or this is probably my system's issue. This one doesn't incorporate anti-aliasing until the end. You could run this through a wave shaper and oversample it, and if you don't know what that is, you got to go watch the digital audio basic series and theoretically get your sound out. But when you're working with it, you're going to be having aliasing, and when you render it, you're going to not have aliasing anymore. So it's going to sound different. Usually you'll like the difference. It'll be more clean. But if you're going for a very distorted, sort of grimy texture, it can have an enormous impact on what you're doing. Because if you take out some of your original content, run it through a bunch of stuff, and then it comes out, and then you change that original content, then run it through the stuff, then you're going to have some serious issues. So there's some sort of give and trade with this. I'm not aware of right now of a way to turn off the anti-aliasing. I'm not sure if it's possible. If someone knows if it's possible, you should let me know, because that'd be really cool. So that's right off the bat in the first video. You should just be aware of that if something goes weird while you're using this plugin, because this is an old plugin. As a result, it has a thing. Now you could turn off globally. I believe there's a button somewhere in FL that allows you to turn off all the oversampling, or it allows you to control the amount. I suppose you could render it out separately as audio and then put it in. And that's just the same as doing it, but that's like way more work and way less intuitive. That's a whole workflow thing. So, okay, there are ways to do it, but I'm looking for just like a simple button that you can turn off right from the get-go to keep FL from doing it without having to touch all the other plugins and global settings and yada, yada, yada. So, okay, so that's the first one. You can see if you didn't understand most of that ramble, then you should go really look up some of the stuff that I was just talking about in that series. The other series I want you to watch is the the Sound and Synth Basics series. Why that series? Well, because I'm going to be going over a lot of basic principles. Personally, it's some of my favorite stuff to teach, and I'm going to be reiterating some of it as I go along, just to, hopefully refresh, maybe give you a new perspective and something that I didn't say before. But that series is specifically made, so if you don't know what harmonics are, what oscillators are, what pitch is, real pitch, not fake pitch. I'm talking about like how crazy pitch is, and what harmonics versus like overtones are. If you don't know you probably heard these terms, probably are familiar with these terms, but you've probably never like really sat down and been like, this is what this term is, then you need to go check out that series. If you don't know I cover the different types of synthesis, subtractive synthesis, FM, additive. We're going to be using elements of a lot of these things. Like they've got an AM oscillator here, which is basically RM. Synthesis. So there's a whole bunch of things that I expect you to just know from that series. It is a rather large series, but I tried to cover all the basic principles. It does weird things with stereo too. I don't think I have a stereo video in that series, so I may add that rather soon, because understanding stereo is a pretty basic thing for sound design. It is a very mixy concept though, very mixer-like. So anyways, you're going to be learning all that. So you're going to be taking this plugin, we're going to be making some cool things, make some sounds, get some techniques. You want to know what all that stuff is, because I'm not going to be going over that stuff if it's covered elsewhere. And yes, if you have any questions about this, let me know. If you use this a lot and some of you guys are crazy. I know I've seen these comments where they're like, oh, I use this for every sound. And I'm like, dude, you're weird. And so, but if you do, drop some comments, share your pride about the 3 oscillator. Did you grow up with this thing if you're an old time FL user? If you happen to run across this video, I expect mostly beginners to be looking up sort of what this does. But yes. That's that. We will be covering other concepts and a little more detail, like envelopes and stuff, just because they're in here as separate features. The actual plugin itself is only this page, actually, so it's really, really easy. But these are integrated with it. They're available on other pages. Typically, this will be integrated into a synthesizer anyway, as a part of the synthesizer. Here, it's sort of a thing outside of it, but it's pretty clear that it was meant to be in it. Like, not meant to be as in it's not there. Just the way they've integrated it, they've made it available in other places. So if you learn it here, you're good. And this last page, I'm not going to go over it at all, because all you need to do if you want to know what this page does is go to my FL12 effects series and look up MIDI effects, and it will show you all this jumbo jazz right here and what it does. So this is like a whole separate thing, and I'm not going to be explaining what these things do, FL effects. I will generally try to point you to videos that I already have on a subject. Yes, I believe that's it. If you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day. And this is the first video in Sound and Synth Basics. I'm super excited about this series. I hope you're excited. If you don't know anything about sound, if this is your first shot, then this is the series for you. I'm going to teach it. I've thought about this. I want a real solid series, because as I get into more advanced things, I need people to understand the basics like how I know that I understand them. So I've thought a lot about the concepts and orders that this has to be.